I didn't know my life was about to fall apart over a 7-minute conversation in my own living room. It wasn't an affair, it wasn't money, it wasn't abuse. It was the sound of my husband calmly telling another woman the truth and pressing play. That night, at my sister's engagement party, in front of 40 guests, my husband exposed a private conversation I had with my sister months earlier. A conversation where she admitted she was planning to stop taking birth control without telling her boyfriend, hoping a pregnancy would secure her future. I remember the exact moment: the clinking of wine glasses, the warm lights of the restaurant, my sister glowing beside her fiancé, his parents talking about family values and doing the right thing. And then my husband stepping forward. "Paul deserves to know," he said. Before I could even stand up, before I could reach him, the video was playing. My voice, my sister's voice, clear as day. 7 minutes that destroyed 2 engagements and a 9-year marriage. Now I'm 38 years old, divorced, living alone in an apartment that echoes at night. Half my family calls me a villain. The other half won't speak to me at all. My sister is a single mother again, and the man I once shared a forever home with says he has no regrets. He says he chose honesty. I say he betrayed his own family. The worst part? Some days, I'm not sure which of us is right. This is how it happened, and why I filed for divorce. I'm Taylor. I'm 36, and I work in marketing, strategy decks, campaign launches, client calls that never end, and the kind of professional smile you learn to keep even when you're exhausted. My friends used to joke that I could sell warmth in a snowstorm. My husband, Noah, 38, runs a small consulting business from home. He's smart in a quiet way, the kind of person who listens more than he talks, until he decides something is right or wrong. Then he becomes immovable. At the time, I used to call it integrity. Now I wonder if it was always control disguised as principle. We were married for 9 years. 9. The number looks harmless on paper, but it contains whole eras of our lives: promotions, family funerals, holidays that blurred together, and the slow construction of what I truly believed was a stable, boring, forever love. 3 years ago, we bought our forever home. That's what I called it. A 4-bedroom house in the suburbs with a quiet street, 2-car garage, and a kitchen I'd fantasized about long before we could afford it. I loved that house the way you love a symbol, proof that you made it. People always asked why we didn't have kids. We didn't dodge the question. We had a simple answer. I can't have children. In my 20s, I had a medical condition, something that took years to process emotionally, even after the doctors explained it clinically. Noah and I made peace with it, or at least I thought we did. We told ourselves we didn't want to adopt, didn't want to pursue other options, that our life could still be full. And most days it was. But infertility has a way of becoming an invisible third person in a marriage. It sits quietly in the room when your friends announce pregnancies. It shows up at family gatherings when someone says, "Maybe next year." It makes you ache in ways you can't always explain. That's why I was so close to my younger sister, Veronica. She's 29 now, 7 years younger than me. And she's always been the loud one, the emotional one, the one who loves hard and falls hard. She got pregnant at 22 after a short relationship that crashed and burned. She had Tyler, my nephew, who's 7 now, big eyes and a nervous habit of twisting his shirt when he's unsure. The father was never involved, not even at the beginning. Veronica said she didn't want child support. She said he made it clear he wanted nothing to do with the baby, and she didn't want to beg. What she didn't say out loud, but I always heard anyway, was this: "I'm already unwanted enough. I won't be rejected twice." When Tyler was born, Veronica was working a call center job, barely keeping rent paid. That was the phase of her life where her voice always sounded tired. The phase where she'd laugh too loudly in front of people but cry in the car when she thought no one could hear. Noah and I helped, a lot. There was one moment I can still see clearly. Tyler was 3 months old, and Veronica couldn't afford the security deposit for a new apartment. Noah handed her $2,000 like it wasn't a big deal, like he was paying for dinner. Veronica cried and hugged him so hard I thought she'd break him in half. Over the years, we bought diapers. We covered daycare a few times when she was between jobs. We had them over for dinner twice a week, sometimes more. Our house became her reset button, a place she could breathe. If I'm honest, it also became my way of having something that looked like motherhood in my life. Tyler would run through my hallway, barefoot, asking for juice. He'd fall asleep on my couch. He'd call me Aunt Taylor in that soft, trusting voice kids have when they don't know adults can disappoint them. And Veronica was always chasing stability. When Tyler was 4, she started dating Craig. Craig was a walking warning sign. He moved into her apartment after 2 months. He didn't work. He smoked inside, even though Tyler had asthma. Veronica defended him the way scared people do, like the truth will kill them if they admit it. He's looking for work. He's just going through a hard time. He's actually really good with Tyler when no one's around. Then one night, at 11 p.m., Veronica called me crying so hard I couldn't understand her at first. Noah and I drove over immediately. Craig had gotten drunk, yelled at Tyler for spilling juice, and shoved Veronica into the kitchen counter when she tried to intervene. Tyler locked himself in the bathroom. When we arrived, Craig was passed out on the couch, and Veronica was sitting on the bathroom floor talking to Tyler through the door like she was trying to hold her own child together with her voice. Noah woke Craig up, told him he had 10 minutes to get out. Craig yelled back, "This is her apartment. I'm not going anywhere." Noah called the police. Craig left before they arrived. Veronica and Tyler stayed with us for 2 weeks while she changed the locks and tried to convince herself she wasn't a failure for letting someone like that into her life. After that, things improved. She enrolled in online courses. She got promoted to team lead. She started therapy through her insurance. Tyler did better in school. For almost 2 years, it felt like we'd survived something. Then 6 months ago, she met Paul. Paul was 33, worked in IT for a hospital, had his own condo, drove a decent car. Not flashy, stable. And the most important part? He was good with Tyler. Baseball games, homework help, talking about teaching him how to fix cars. I remember the way my chest warmed when Veronica said, "Tyler likes him." Because I wanted this for her so badly I could taste it. I wanted my sister to stop bleeding from old wounds. I wanted Tyler to have a good man in his life. I wanted a future where I didn't have to worry every time my phone buzzed at night. Noah met Paul twice. He said Paul was fine, quiet, awkward, polite. But Noah didn't feel what I felt. I saw my sister finally standing on solid ground, and I was terrified the ground would crack again. And that fear, the constant fear, is what made me listen too long, agree too fast, and laugh at something I should have shut down immediately. Because the truth is, the night everything began, it didn't feel like a crime. It felt like a desperate woman planning how to finally be safe. And me, being her sister. The night everything shifted was a Thursday in September. I remember because I had cooked too much food. When I'm nervous, I cook like I'm feeding an army. Roasted chicken, garlic potatoes, a salad with pomegranate seeds, because Veronica once said they made her feel fancy. I even lit candles, though it wasn't a holiday. Veronica had sounded different on the phone earlier that week. Lighter, almost breathless. "I think this is it, Tay," she had said. "I think he might be the one." I wanted to believe her so badly that I built an entire future in my head before dinner even started. She arrived at exactly 6 p.m., glowing. That's the only word that fits. She kept tucking her hair behind her ear, smiling for no reason. Tyler was at a sleepover, so it was just the 3 of us. Noah was in the kitchen, putting together a cheese board. Our house has an open floor plan, kitchen flowing into the living room, but there's a partial shelving wall that blocks the direct view. You can hear everything, even if you can't see who's standing where. Veronica and I sat on the couch. She started talking about Paul. "He mentioned moving in together," she said, eyes wide. I grinned. "That's huge." She nodded quickly. "Tyler's already calling him dad sometimes. Paul doesn't correct him." That part made my throat tighten. I imagined Tyler finally attaching to someone stable, someone who wouldn't disappear. But then her tone changed. I need to make sure this works." I laughed softly. "What does that mean? You're planning a ring heist?" She didn't laugh the way I expected. She leaned closer. "I'm almost 30, Tay. I already spent 7 years as a single mom. I'm tired." Her voice cracked on that last word. I reached for her hand. She continued, quieter now. "If I got pregnant, he'd step up. He's that kind of man. His family is traditional. There's no way he'd walk away." My heart stuttered. I remember blinking at her, trying to process it. "What are you saying?" She inhaled slowly. "I'm thinking about stopping birth control." The air in the room changed. I should have shut it down right there. Instead, I asked, "Does he know you're thinking about that?" She rolled her eyes. "Of course not. He'd freak out. We've only been together 6 months. And then she said the sentence that still echoes in my head. "But if I got pregnant, he wouldn't leave." She said it like she was describing gravity. I told myself she was scared, that this was fear talking, that she didn't actually mean it the way it sounded. I even tried to soften it. You don't want to trap him. She winced. It's not trapping, it's securing. Securing. As if a baby were a contract. I could hear Noah's knife stop slicing cheese in the kitchen. Veronica kept talking, filling the silence. I feel guilty about even thinking it, she admitted. But I deserve stability. Tyler deserves a real family. I can't start over again at 35. I looked at her, really looked. This was the sister who called me at 11 p.m. when Craig shoved her. The sister who slept in our guest room with a suitcase and a child who wouldn't come out of the bathroom. The sister who always seemed one bad decision away from losing everything. Fear does strange things to love. Sometimes it makes you protective. Sometimes it makes you reckless. I laughed softly, trying to diffuse it. You'd better time it right then, I said. It was half a joke. Half. She smiled, relieved I hadn't scolded her. I've been tracking my cycle, she said. We both laughed. God. We laughed. I told myself it was girl talk, that she just needed to vent, that she wouldn't actually do it. But then I heard myself saying, if it ever happened, just frame it as an accident. Don't tell him you planned anything. There it was, the line I crossed. Noah stepped out from the kitchen. His face was pale. Are you seriously planning to trap Paul with a pregnancy? The words hit like a slap. Veronica froze. You were listening? It's not private if it's happening 10 feet away in my house. I stood up quickly. Noah, calm down. But his voice had that rigid edge I knew too well. You're talking about deceiving a man into fatherhood. Veronica's face turned red. You don't understand what it's like to be alone. I understand honesty, he shot back. I felt something flare inside me then. Not just defensiveness, but something deeper. Protectiveness. You don't get it, I told him. You've never had to worry about your biological clock running out. You've never had to raise a child alone. His jaw tightened. That doesn't justify lying. It's not lying, I insisted, though even as I said it, I felt the weakness in the argument. It's complicated. Veronica started crying. Noah refused to apologize. He told her Paul deserved to know if she stopped birth control. She left in tears. That was the first real fight Noah and I had in years. He accused me of defending manipulation. I accused him of judging my sister like she was a criminal. He slept in the guest room. The next morning, I made coffee like nothing had happened. Because that's what you do when you believe you're still on the same team. Except we weren't. And I didn't realize yet that my husband had stopped arguing and started recording. 2 months passed after that dinner. On the surface, life resumed its rhythm. Veronica still came over. Noah was polite but distant. I could feel the tension in him every time my phone buzzed with her name. He never said anything directly after that night, but I caught him listening, subtly, when Veronica and I talked. He called it concern. I called it paranoia. Then in November, Veronica told me she was pregnant. She said it quietly at first, just the two of us on the phone. I took a test, she whispered. It's positive. My heart jumped into my throat. Are you sure? Yes. There was fear in her voice, but there was also something else. Relief. That same night, she and Paul came to dinner. We were barely 20 minutes into the meal when Veronica put down her fork. I have something to tell you. Paul looked confused. You're scaring me. She smiled nervously and touched her stomach, an unconscious gesture, like she was already protecting something. I'm pregnant. The room froze. Paul blinked. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. When did you find out? He asked. Last week, she said. I wasn't feeling well. I took a test. I watched his face carefully. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He looked stunned. I jumped up and hugged her. Oh my God, I said, tears in my eyes. Tyler's going to be such a good big brother. I wanted to fill the silence, to make it feel joyful, to smooth over the awkwardness before it hardened into doubt. Paul nodded slowly. Of course, he said, we'll figure it out. But his voice sounded hollow. And then it happened. The smallest thing. Veronica glanced at me. 2 seconds. A look. Not a smirk, not triumph. Just shared knowledge. And Noah saw it. I saw him watching us. That night after they left, he came upstairs where I was taking off my earrings. Do you really believe that was an accident? He asked. I didn't turn around. Of course it was. He stepped closer. Taylor. That conversation in September was just talk, I insisted. She was scared. And you encouraged her. I didn't encourage her. I listened. You suggested framing it as an accident. I turned then. You're twisting it. No, I'm remembering it. His voice wasn't angry. It was controlled, which was worse. What about Paul? He asked. Does he get a say in his own life? He's a grown man, I snapped. He'll be fine. What if someone had done that to you? I laughed bitterly. That's not even comparable. I can't get pregnant. The second it left my mouth, I knew it was cruel. But I was tired of being interrogated. He went quiet after that. Not defeated. Resolved. A week later, Paul proposed. His parents, traditional, deeply religious, pushed for a quick wedding before Veronica started showing. There was an engagement party planned for early December at a restaurant his family rented out. Everyone was thrilled, except Noah. He moved through the house like a man carrying something heavy. The day of the engagement party, he was too calm. I should have recognized it. He dressed carefully, slipped something into his jacket pocket. I noticed it, but I didn't ask. The restaurant was glowing with gold lights and laughter. About 40 people were there. Paul's parents, siblings, grandmother, Veronica's friends, our parents. Tyler was running around in a tiny suit. Paul looked nervous, smiling tightly. About an hour in, Paul's father made a toast about family values and responsibility. I remember thinking, see, this is working. Everything is fine. Then Noah disappeared for a few minutes. When he returned, Paul was with him. They walked straight toward our table. Noah didn't look at me. He looked at Paul and said, "You deserve to see something." Before I could stand, before I could process, Paul's phone was playing the video. My voice, Veronica's voice. Crystal clear. I'm thinking about stopping birth control. If it happens, just frame it as an accident. 7 minutes. 7 devastating minutes. Veronica's face drained of color. Paul, she reached for the phone. He pulled it away. He turned up the volume. My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. Paul's mother came over. "What is this?" He handed her the phone. She watched. Her expression hardened like stone. Paul's father joined her, watched, then asked, "Is this baby even his?" Veronica broke down. "It is, of course it is." Paul looked at her like he didn't recognize her. "Did you plan this?" he asked. "It's out of context," she sobbed. "We were just talking." "When did you change your mind?" he asked quietly. "Before or after you got pregnant?" She didn't answer. The room was no longer a celebration. It was a courtroom. I grabbed Noah's arm. "What have you done?" I whispered. "I told him the truth," he replied. "You humiliated her." She humiliated herself. Paul's mother announced the wedding was off. Paul said he needed time, and then he left. His entire family followed within minutes. Veronica collapsed into a chair, hysterical. Tyler started crying because he didn't understand why everyone was shouting. The restaurant manager approached awkwardly. "Are we still having the party?" No, we weren't. In the car ride home, I felt something break inside me. Not just because of Veronica, but because I saw it clearly now. My husband had planned this. He didn't confront privately. He didn't warn us. He waited and chose the most public, irreversible moment possible. When we got home, I screamed at him. "You betrayed my family." He stared at me, steady. "I protected someone from a lie." "You destroyed her life." "She did." "You destroyed ours." That's when I said it. "Get out." He packed a bag. 1 week later, I filed for divorce. Not because he told the truth, but because of how easily he decided it was his place to decide everything. The house felt different the night Noah left. Not emptier, sharper. Like the walls themselves were judging me. I didn't sleep. I lay in our bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the engagement party frame by frame. The look on Paul's face. My sister collapsing into herself. Tyler crying in a corner while adults argued about paternity tests. And Noah standing there like a man who believed he'd done something noble. The next morning, my phone exploded. My mother, my father, Veronica's friends, even a few of Noah's relatives. Half of them were furious. Half were confused. All of them wanted an explanation. Veronica called me around 9 a.m. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "He ruined everything," she kept saying. "He ruined everything." "Breathe," I told her, though my own chest felt tight. "Paul won't answer me. His mom says the wedding is off. They want a paternity test." "A paternity test, Taylor." Her voice cracked on the last words. "That's insulting," she whispered. "After everything." I swallowed. "Veronica, you did plan it." Silence. Then anger. "So you're taking his side now?" "No," I said quickly. I'm trying to understand what happens next." She cried harder. "I can't be a single mom again. I can't." That sentence hit me like a punch. Because underneath all of this, beneath morality, beneath pride, that was the real fear. Being alone again. I hung up and stared at the kitchen table where the fight in September had started. Noah texted once that afternoon. "We need to talk calmly." Calmly. As if he hadn't detonated a bomb. I didn't answer. That night, I drove to my parents' house. My mother opened the door before I even knocked. She pulled me into a hug so tight I thought I'd break. "He had no right," she whispered into my hair. My father was quieter, more reserved. "He could have handled it differently," he said carefully. That sentence lodged in my brain. Differently. Not don't tell him. Not protect the lie. Just differently. Later that evening, Noah called. I almost didn't answer. When I did, his voice was steady. "I didn't want to humiliate her," he said. You brought a USB drive to an engagement party, I snapped. Don't lie to me. I gave Paul information before he legally tied himself to something he didn't choose. You chose the most public way possible. I wanted the truth out where it couldn't be twisted. I laughed bitterly. You don't get to decide how other people's relationships unfold. And you don't get to decide for Paul whether deception is acceptable. There it was. The fault line. This wasn't about my sister anymore. This was about how we viewed power. I said something then that I hadn't fully admitted to myself before. You embarrassed me too. Silence on the other end. I know, he said quietly. You made me look like a villain. You encouraged her. I was trying to protect her. From what? He asked softly. Consequences? I didn't answer. Because maybe, yes. The next few days blurred together. Veronica had a panic attack. I drove her to urgent care. She kept saying stress wasn't good for the baby. She kept blaming Noah, blaming Paul, blaming everyone except herself. Paul went quiet. Then word came through a mutual friend. He was calling off the engagement. He wanted a paternity test. Veronica refused at first. It's insulting, she insisted. He should trust me. But trust was exactly what had evaporated. Meanwhile, my marriage unraveled quietly. Noah came home once to grab more clothes. We stood in the hallway like strangers. You could have talked to me first, I said. I did, he replied, in September. That wasn't the same. You defended it. I was trying to protect my sister, and I was trying to protect someone else. The room felt smaller. Do you regret it? I asked. He didn't hesitate. No. That was the moment something inside me solidified. If he had said yes, even a little, I might have fought harder. But he didn't. He believed he had done the right thing. And I believed he had betrayed my trust by making a unilateral decision that destroyed everything publicly. A week later, I filed for divorce. When I signed the papers, my hand shook, not because I didn't love him, but because I realized love wasn't enough. We had fundamentally different definitions of loyalty. To him, loyalty meant truth at any cost. To me, loyalty meant protecting the people you love, even when they're flawed. Maybe both definitions are dangerous in their extremes. I don't know. What I do know is this. After 9 years of marriage, we weren't arguing about a pregnancy anymore. We were arguing about values, and neither of us was willing to bend. Divorce papers moved strangely. Slow on paper, fast in real life. 3 weeks after I filed, Noah was still at a hotel, and I was still in the house we once called forever. We weren't fighting over money. We weren't dragging each other through court. We split assets down the middle like two exhausted business partners dissolving a company. That hurt more than screaming would have. Veronica's situation, meanwhile, spiraled. Paul insisted on the paternity test. At first, she refused. It's humiliating, she told me, pacing in my living room. After everything we've been through. What have you been through? I asked gently. She stopped pacing. He exposed me. He made me look manipulative. I hesitated. You did say you were going to stop birth control. Her jaw tightened. That doesn't mean I actually did. But you did, I said quietly. She looked at me sharply. You don't know that. The truth was I didn't. Not with certainty. And that uncertainty became the crack everything poured through. 2 weeks after the engagement party, Paul agreed to meet Noah. Yes, Noah, not me. When I found out, something bitter twisted in my stomach. Why was my husband the one he trusted? Why did the man I was divorcing get to be the reasonable one? Paul apparently thanked him for showing the video. Said it was like someone turned on a light in a dark room. When I heard that, I cried in my car in a grocery store parking lot. Because suddenly I wasn't just defending my sister. I was defending something that maybe really had been wrong. The paternity test results came back in December. Paul was the father. Veronica called me the second she got the results. See, she said. See, he doubted me for nothing. Did he? I asked carefully. She went quiet, because the issue wasn't biology anymore. It was trust. Paul told her he still wasn't going to marry her. He said the test doesn't erase the lie, she said, voice shaking. He said if I could lie about that, what else would I lie about? She was furious. He's acting like I committed a crime. What did you expect? I asked softly. I expected him to fight for us. And what about the part where you didn't give him the full choice? She slammed her hand on the counter. I was scared. I know. I didn't want to be alone again. I know. That was the pattern. Fear, justification, anger. Meanwhile, Paul hired a lawyer. He wanted custody rights, child support arrangements, a structured plan. Veronica lost it. He's ruining everything, she screamed one night, while Tyler sat in the hallway listening. He was supposed to fix my life, not make it harder. That sentence echoed in my mind long after she left. He was supposed to fix my life. That's what this had been about from the beginning. Security, stability, not love. Paul stopped speaking to her outside of legal communication. His parents fully backed him. They had already set up a nursery at their house. They told Veronica plainly, Paul would be a father, but he would not be her husband. Tyler started asking questions. Why doesn't Paul come over anymore? Veronica told him Paul was busy. He stopped asking after a while. That silence scared me more than tears. Then came the night Veronica showed up at Paul's condo unannounced with the baby after she was born. Yes, she had a girl. I saw photos online before she even called me. She looked exhausted. Tyler stood beside her, holding his sister carefully. Paul held the baby for a few minutes. Then he told Veronica she couldn't show up without calling first. She cried. He stayed calm. Later, through a mutual friend, I heard what he said to her that day. You shut me out the moment you decided to lie. That sentence felt like it wasn't just about Veronica. It felt like it was about me too. Meanwhile, Noah moved into a small apartment. He stopped helping Veronica financially, stopped communicating with my family entirely. His lawyer advised it. My mother sent him long messages calling him self-righteous. My father blocked his number. He didn't respond. And then something else happened that I didn't expect. Paul and Noah stayed in touch. They met for coffee occasionally. When I heard that, I felt something sharp and humiliating. Two men bonding over the wreckage of my family. Noah told someone, I don't know who, that he was sleeping better. Sleeping better. I lay awake at night, staring at the empty space beside me, wondering if I had defended the wrong side. My mother called me one evening. Are you happy now? She asked gently. About what? You got rid of him. I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I hadn't gotten rid of him out of hate. I had done it because I couldn't live with someone who believed public exposure was justified if he believed he was right. But now, everything he warned about had happened anyway. Veronica was a single mother again. Paul wasn't coming back. Tyler was confused. And my marriage was over. Escalation doesn't always look like explosions. Sometimes it looks like quiet consequences unfolding exactly the way someone predicted. And realizing that doesn't feel like victory. It feels like standing in the ruins, wondering whether loyalty blinded you, or whether love simply makes everyone foolish sometimes. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday afternoon. No dramatic courtroom scene, no shouting. Just two lawyers, a conference room that smelled faintly of old carpet, and a stack of papers that reduced 9 years of marriage to signatures and asset divisions. I got the house. Noah kept his business and half the savings. We shook hands like professionals concluding a deal. When I walked out of that building, the sky looked offensively normal. Cars passed. People laughed somewhere down the block. A woman pushed a stroller and adjusted a tiny pink hat on her baby's head. I stood there for a full minute before I realized I was holding my breath. That night, I slept alone in what used to be our bedroom. The house felt enormous. Every room carried echoes. The guest room where he slept after our first fight. The kitchen where Veronica whispered her plan. The hallway where he packed his suitcase without looking at me. I thought I would feel vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. Veronica had given birth 3 weeks earlier. A baby girl. She sent photos in the family group chat. Tiny fingers, pink blanket, Tyler smiling nervously beside his sister. There was no Paul in the pictures. He was there, legally and financially. He would take the baby 2 weekends a month once she was old enough. But he wasn't there, not like she had imagined. Tyler started acting out at school. His teacher called Veronica because he shoved another child during recess. When she asked him why, he said, "Because dads leave." That sentence crushed me. Veronica didn't say it was about Paul. She didn't have to. One night, she showed up at my house unannounced. She looked thinner, dark circles under her eyes, the baby asleep in her car seat. "I don't understand why he won't forgive me," she said, sitting at my kitchen table. Her voice was flat now. The hysterics were gone. I said I was sorry. "Did you?" I asked gently. She stared at me. "For planning it." Silence. I said I was scared. "That's not the same thing." Her eyes filled with tears again. "I just wanted a family." "You still have one," I said softly. She laughed bitterly. "This isn't what I meant." And that's when it hit me. She didn't want partnership. She wanted security. And security built on fear is fragile. After she left, I walked through the house slowly, room by room. I sat on the couch and replayed the engagement party again. Noah's face when he pressed play. Calm, certain. Was he cruel? Or was he unwilling to live inside a lie? That question haunted me. Because if I'm honest, part of me knew in September that what Veronica was suggesting wasn't right. I just didn't want to be the one to stop her. I didn't want to be the sister who judged. I didn't want to be the infertile woman telling a fertile woman how to manage her future. There's something humiliating about not being able to have children. It twists your sense of moral authority. Who was I to lecture her about motherhood? So I laughed. I normalized it. I called it girl talk. And Noah, he didn't laugh. He drew a line. The lowest moment came one Thursday night. I was in the kitchen alone. The baby monitor app on my phone, Veronica had shared it with me for when I babysat, pinged with a notification. Tyler had walked into the nursery and whispered, "I'll be your dad if Paul doesn't want to." I pressed the phone to my chest and cried harder than I had in months. Because children shouldn't have to fill adult gaps. Because my sister's fear had created another crack in a child's foundation. Because my marriage had died in the middle of it. And because deep down I knew this. If Noah had told Paul privately, maybe we'd still be married. If I had told Veronica firmly to stop, maybe the engagement wouldn't have exploded. If Paul had forgiven her, maybe Tyler wouldn't be confused. But none of those maybes existed. Only consequences did. My mother still blames Noah. My father refuses to say his name. Veronica reposts quotes online about men who can't commit. And I lie awake at night wondering whether loyalty should have limits. That's the dark part. Not losing my husband. Not the public humiliation. It's realizing that sometimes love makes you defend something you know is flawed. Because admitting it's flawed feels like betraying your own blood. And in doing so, you might lose something even more permanent. Yourself. The turning point didn't happen in a courtroom. It didn't happen in a fight. It happened on a quiet Tuesday afternoon over coffee. Paul texted me. Not Noah. Me. Can we talk? I almost didn't respond. Pride is a powerful thing. So is resentment. But curiosity won. We met at a small cafe near the hospital where he worked. He looked thinner than I remembered. Less tense, though, like someone who had walked through fire and decided not to step back into it. "Thank you for coming," he said. I nodded. "What do you want to talk about?" He didn't waste time. "I know you're divorcing Noah because of what happened." I stiffened slightly. "That's between us." He nodded. "I understand. I need you to know something." I waited. "When he showed me that video," Paul said slowly, "I was furious. Not just at Veronica, at him, at the humiliation, at the timing." I swallowed. "But," he continued, "if he hadn't done it then, I would have married her." The words landed heavier than I expected. I would have signed legal documents, combined finances, had another baby under the belief that everything started honestly. He held my gaze. I deserved to know. I didn't respond immediately, because for months I had focused on how Noah revealed it, not what he revealed. Paul leaned back in his chair. "The paternity test proved I'm the father," he said, "and I'm going to be there for my daughter. But the lie, it changed how I see her, how I see us." He paused. "I still care about Veronica. I care about Tyler, but I can't build a marriage on something that started with manipulation." Manipulation. I had called it fear. He called it manipulation. Two words for the same action. Before leaving, he said something else that stayed with me. "You loved your sister. I get that. But protecting someone doesn't mean shielding them from consequences." I drove home in silence. No music, no podcasts. Just my thoughts, loud and relentless. That night, I walked into my empty bedroom and looked at the space where Noah used to sleep. I realized something painful. I hadn't divorced him because he told the truth. I divorced him because I couldn't tolerate the way he told it. But beneath that anger was something deeper. He exposed something I had chosen not to confront. Not just Veronica's behavior. My own complicity. I had encouraged her, minimized it, laughed. And when confronted, I doubled down. I told myself it was about loyalty. But was it? Or was it about control, believing I could shape outcomes by managing information? I called Noah that night. He sounded surprised. "I don't want to fight," I said. "I'm not fighting," he replied calmly. Silence stretched between us. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Okay. If you could do it again, would you tell him privately?" A pause. "Yes," he admitted. That surprised me. "But I wouldn't stay silent," he added. "Not about something that permanent." "Why didn't you tell me you had the recording?" "Because you would have warned her." The truth in that answer hurt. "Maybe," I whispered. He didn't gloat. He didn't push. He simply said, "I couldn't live pretending I didn't hear it." That was it. That was the difference between us. He couldn't live with silence. I could. The next week, I made a decision. Not about him. About myself. I started therapy. Not because I thought I was evil. Not because I thought he was perfect. But because I needed to understand why my instinct was to protect at any cost. In my first session, the therapist asked me a question that felt like a scalpel. "If the roles were reversed," she said gently, "and someone tried to secure your life through deception, would you want someone to tell you?" I didn't answer right away, but eventually I nodded. Yes, I would. That was my turning point. Not forgiving Noah, not condemning Veronica, but admitting that truth and loyalty aren't opposites. They just hurt differently. And sometimes the most painful truth is realizing you weren't entirely innocent either. Time doesn't fix everything. It just removes the audience. A few months after the divorce, the drama stopped trending in our family group chats. No more long paragraphs, no more accusations, no more late night calls dissecting what Noah should have done. Instead, there was quiet. And in that quiet, consequences settled into their permanent shapes. Veronica moved back in with our parents temporarily. Daycare for 2 children was too expensive. Paul was paying child support, but it wasn't the fairy tale rescue she once imagined. Security built on someone else's obligation feels different from security built on love. Tyler started therapy. The school counselor recommended it after he began withdrawing during group activities. He stopped talking about Paul altogether. When adults mentioned his name, he changed the subject. That hurt more than anger would have. The baby, Emma, was healthy, beautiful, wide eyes and soft curls. Paul showed up consistently for scheduled visits. His parents had a nursery ready at their house. They weren't cruel to Veronica anymore, but they were firm. The wedding was never rescheduled. There was no dramatic final confrontation. Just paperwork and boundaries. One evening, Veronica called me after Paul picked Emma up for the weekend. I thought if he saw her enough, he'd change his mind, she said. About marriage? I asked. Yes. Silence lingered. He hasn't, she admitted. There was something new in her voice. Not hysteria. Not denial. Resignation. Do you think he'll ever forgive me? She asked. I chose my words carefully. I think forgiveness and trust are different things. She didn't argue. She just breathed quietly into the phone. My parents still blame Noah publicly. But privately, I've noticed something subtle. My father doesn't defend Veronica's decision the way he used to. He doesn't say Noah was wrong about the lie. He only says Noah was wrong about the method. And that distinction matters. As for Noah, he moved into a smaller apartment and rebuilt his life methodically. New clients, new routines. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard he was lighter, sleeping better, less tense. It stung at first. How could he feel relief when I felt loss? But over time, I understood something uncomfortable. We were both relieved. Not because we stopped loving each other, but because the conflict between our values had stopped. We weren't waking up in silent opposition anymore. We weren't watching each other with suspicion. Sometimes peace feels like failure before it feels like healing. Paul and Noah still meet occasionally. That used to make me furious. Now it feels almost logical. 2 people bound by the same moment, processing it from opposite sides. Paul once told me, during another brief coffee meeting, I don't hate Veronica, I just couldn't marry someone I couldn't trust. That sentence is the quiet core of all this. Not hatred, not revenge, trust. Meanwhile, my own world shrank before it expanded again. The house felt too big, so I sold it. Yes, I sold our forever home, not out of bitterness, out of necessity. Every room held an echo of conflict. I moved into a smaller townhouse closer to work. 2 bedrooms, clean lines, less history. For the first time in years, I arranged furniture without consulting anyone. It was strangely empowering. My relationship with Veronica shifted too. We don't pretend anymore. She doesn't call her plan girl talk. She calls it what it was, desperation. She hasn't apologized to Noah. I don't know if she ever will. But she stopped saying he ruined everything. That's progress. The biggest fallout, though, wasn't financial or legal. It was philosophical. At family dinners now, there's an unspoken line. No one jokes about trapping men. No one frames deception as empowerment. The story sits between us like a cautionary tale no one wants to narrate out loud. And me? I stopped defending, stopped arguing, stopped trying to rewrite what happened. Because fallout isn't about who wins. It's about what remains after the smoke clears. And what remains is this: a single mother of 2 learning hard lessons about security, a father who chose involvement without marriage, a man who refused to live with silence, and a woman, me, who had to confront the difference between loyalty and denial. The dust has settled, but settlement isn't the same as satisfaction. It's just stability. And sometimes that has to be enough. I'm 36 now. Divorced. Living in a townhouse that doesn't echo the way the old house did. Some nights I sit on my couch with a glass of wine and think about how close everything was to looking perfect. A wedding, a baby, a stable family, a long marriage intact. From the outside, it could have worked. Maybe Paul would have eventually buried his doubts. Maybe Veronica would have convinced herself the means didn't matter because the outcome was secure. Maybe Noah and I would have learned to avoid certain conversations entirely. But maybe is a fragile foundation. Here's what I know now. I didn't divorce Noah because he told the truth. I divorced him because I felt exposed, humiliated, and overridden. But in therapy, I had to confront something harder. I was angry because he forced a reckoning I wasn't ready to face. I hid behind loyalty, behind sisterhood, behind fear of judging a woman who had already struggled so much. But loyalty without boundaries becomes complicity, and protection without honesty becomes control. I see that now. Veronica is still rebuilding. She works. She parents. She's tired, but steadier. She doesn't talk about security the way she used to. She talks about independence. Paul shows up for his daughter consistently. He's not the villain she once painted him as. He's just a man who drew a line. Noah. I don't know what his next chapter looks like. We don't speak anymore beyond logistical matters long resolved. Sometimes I wonder if, in a different version of events, if he had told Paul privately, if I had acknowledged the wrong earlier, we could have survived. But relationships don't just break over actions. They break over values that refuse to bend. He believed truth must be delivered, no matter the cost. I believe love sometimes requires shielding people from consequences. We were both right, and both wrong. The lesson isn't that honesty always wins, and it's not that loyalty should always dominate. It's this: if you build a future on something you're afraid to say out loud, it will collapse eventually. Silence doesn't protect stability, it postpones collapse. I don't regret loving my sister fiercely. I don't regret trying to protect her. But I regret dismissing the magnitude of what she planned. And I regret underestimating how deeply trust matters. To partners, to families, to children, watching everything. When Tyler told his baby sister, "I'll be your dad if Paul doesn't want to," that was the moment I understood the ripple effect. Children absorb what adults rationalize, and they carry it forward. My life is quieter now. Not lonely. Not bitter. Just quieter. I'm dating again. Slowly. Carefully. With more transparency than I've ever had before. When something feels off, I don't laugh it away. When someone I love crosses a line, I don't soften it for comfort. And when I look back at the night of the engagement party, I no longer see only humiliation. I see a reckoning. Painful. Public. Irreversible. But necessary. Some stories don't end with reconciliation. They end with clarity. And sometimes clarity is the only form of peace you get.